Welcome to the Jedi Ranger. I'm John Berry 555, and today I'm presenting my full spoiler review of Star Wars: The Mandalorian and Grogu. So, this film I loved. I've already made my spoiler-free review, so I'll link that up in the card, so go check that out. I also have an initial thoughts review that I made as a YouTube short as well that you can check out. But let's actually dive into the film, because there's a lot of great moments in this film that I really do want to talk about. I was finding in my spoiler-free review that I was running out of things to say without revealing stuff about the film. So let's just begin with the opening. Mando is hunting down an imperial fugitive, imperial warlord. And, we find out that he was supposed to bring that imp in alive, not dead, so that way, the New Republic can question them, because he's now a bounty hunter on contract with the New Republic to hunt down Imperials. And what I really love is that we got to see something that's been expressed before in Legends, not Legends, in other materials, so books, comics, source books, that kind of stuff, that the New Republic made special Sabacc card decks that feature pictures of known Imperials that escaped justice, or in hiding and whatnot, so that way people could find them and tip off the New Republic so the New Republic can arrest them for their crimes and such. I love that we got to see that in this movie. In fact, in some ways that actually nicely parallels the bounty hunter tracking fobs that we saw all the way back in season 1. Except for instead of being a text thing that is a surveillance state will be able to hunt you down from anywhere, rather, it's more like having the poster with your image up in the post office back in the day. That is the equivalent I am drawing, though, because I think it's a very neat way, one, that kind of highlights, the difference between the New Republic and the Empire. The Empire is fine that bounty hunters use tracking fobs. New Republic, like, this is who you're looking for? Good luck. Which, from a hunting someone down who's escaped justice, maybe not as good, but from a general privacy perspective, that is way better. And of course, I loved how I forget that character's name, but she says that they're wanting justice, not revenge, meaning they want to, bring in the former Imperials, question them, figure out where other former Imperials are hiding to bring to justice, and then hold them accountable according to law, give them proper due process and all that, which is something that the Empire never gave the rebels. Which, again, we really don't see it play out in the film, but the fact that that's alluded to does help contribute to the world building of this era of Star Wars, the era of the galaxy that we're currently seeing on screen. And so after the opening scene of that, and by the way, the film actually does open with basically 2 text boxes. Not quite an opening crawl, but still. And this film, uniquely too, most Star Wars films saves every credit for the end, but the main actors and all that, and a few, key production people are listed after the opening scene, but before the main events of the film, which is very different from any really Star Wars property, because even the TV show saves everything for the end. So I thought that was definitely very neat. But while very neat and very different, it was also awesome because of what we were seeing. We were seeing the New Republic Delphi base, I believe, if I got it right. It's basically starship porn, for lack of a better term. Amazingly beautiful shots of all the different New Republic vehicles. X-Wings, Y-Wings, B-Wings, no A-Wings though. We do see a U-Wing in the film though, which I thought was very neat as well. Probably one of the last surviving U-Wings, unless they've made more of them. But it is just beautiful, and of course, such as the Mandalorian theme is just such a beautiful title sequence, for lack of a better term. And honestly, those scenes, those shots of the Rebel fighter starships, or New Republic at this phase, I should say, it's not needed for the plot or anything, but it is gorgeous, and that's what I really love it for. And then, of course, that's when we get some more stuff in that. And then the Mandalorian, despite bringing in the bounty dead instead of alive, he still gets his payment. But it's not in credits. No, he gets a ship. And do you know what that ship is? It is another Razor Crest. And I really love the explanation why all of a sudden there's another ship, how he got his ship back. It's simply a stock Razor Crest style ship. I forget the exact name, though he does call it the Razor Crest in the film, because obviously that's what he's going to name it. Maybe he should name it the Razor Crest 2 or something like that, in my personal opinion. But I love the explanation. It's his payment for hunting down Imperial fugitives for the New Republic. It is a quite satisfying and honestly simple explanation. Its stock doesn't have any of the modifications, but in the film it's addressed that, yeah, he's going to make those modifications. We see him ad hoc with the help of Zeb, because Zeb is in this film from Star Wars: The Rebels. We see him do one ad hoc modification on the fly as they are coming out hot when an extraction goes slightly bad, though they knew it could go hot. So there's that, so you got that thing, but there's then the latest thing with some Inzelans where he's like, okay, I want it to go fast, strip out anything I don't actually need. But basically saying he's going to modify, it's not going to be stock when he's done with it anymore. And honestly, I do kind of like the idea that he has 2 ships. Now, we don't actually see his Naboo Starfighter in flight or in use in this film, but we do see he still has it. And I kind of like the idea. He has basically his commuter car and his RV. I'm serious. It's kind of like that mentality. He has his RV, he can bring his son on trips and all that, and extra people. Then whenever they just want to go someplace, not deal with anything complicated, they got something a lot smaller. I just love that idea. Now I really want to see them go to the equivalent of a national park in Star Wars and just set up a campsite. Okay, now that that's out of the way and that image now that I have in my head, let's actually continue on with the film, because when he gets that, he's also given a new mission, a new bounty by the New Republic, and that's to go meet the twins. So these are presumably the siblings of Jabba the Hutt based on the dialogue in the film, but we also saw them in the Book of Boba Fett trying to, take over Jabba's empire on Tatooine, though they do definitely take over most of the criminal empire except for Tatooine, as we see in the Book of Boba Fett, though that doesn't even come into play at all in this movie at all. But basically, the New Republic is making a deal with them in order to get information on an Imperial fugitive, I believe Commander Coin, who they don't even know what he looks like. They have no leads, no nothing. So they hope by basically hiring Din to rescue Roger the Hutt, the nephew of the twins, the twins would then give Din, and by extension the New Republic, information on where this Commander Coin is, so that way Din can go and arrest him and bring him in for the New Republic. And this is where Roger the Hutt comes in. First, we get to see, some now Hutt and that. Hutt's being described as, they maintain their empire through violence, threat to force, that kind of stuff. Just standard describing who the Hutts are for Grogu, but that also describes it for us, the audience, especially those of us who may not know that much about the Hutts as well. But eventually we get to the planet of, I forget the name, they said it, it's totally blanking, but it's the planet that Roger the Hutt is on. And it's described by the twins that he fell in with a bad crowd, which is just kind of so funny. But we get to see that he's now a arena fighter. We actually did see this in the trailer, but a gladiator. And what's surprising is Din goes to talk to him, in his cell and all that, and find out he's happy. He's happy. He's appreciated. He likes his life. He likes fighting in the ring, being very different than the average Hutt, of course. Very muscular and all that. But Rata speaks about basically having lived in his father's, Jabba's, shadow, and how basically here he's his own person. And that's his two lines through his entire character arc. Him basically wanting to be out of his father's shadow, now wanting to be like his father. And he doesn't want to go back, not just because he found a life he likes, but also because he believes in, as we see later in the film, rightly so, that the twins see him as a threat to their control over the Hutt cartel, over Jabba's former criminal empire. And because of that, he also doesn't want to leave, because he, one, doesn't want to deal with that, because he doesn't want that type of life. He doesn't want to lead the cartel or anything like that. which makes him this very compelling character. But Din does have a mission, so he goes to the person who has Rata's contract and says, hey, I'll buy you out. No, he did not have it, but Din finds out that Rata's next battle, which is going to be the last battle of his contract, is going to be his actual last battle. He's going to be put in basically in a fight till he dies, which Rata is unaware of. And it's described as a Dejeric match, which is very neat because that's what we saw in A New Hope, Chewbacca and R2-D2 playing Let the Wookiee Win. But another neat thing about that scene is, remember, look at the board. What does it look like? And what did the arena look like? A Dejeric board. I did not even pick up on that until they mentioned Dejeric. And wait a second, the arena looked just like a Dejeric board, which I saw was brilliant. If you knew, you knew. I should have picked that up, but I didn't until it was spelled out for me. That's more on me, but the clues were there before it was even revealed. And then when we actually get to that part in the film where that match occurs, it's the same creatures as in the Dejeric game, which is, I think, just so neat and cool. But before we get to that, Din then goes to Rata and tells him, hey, the guy who has your contract, Lord whatever, he's actually going to kill you in the next batch. You're not actually going to go free and have your own arena fighting crew that you control. Rata, of course, doesn't believe this, thinks it's a trick, yada yada, and calls the guards. And guess now what Din has to do, fight Rata in the arena. And he actually does beat Rata, and the crowd starts chanting kill, kill, kill over and over. But Din instead yields, saying that Rata wins, he's released from his contract, and therefore he's free to go. And then of course the trap is spread, all the Dejeric creatures comes out, and Rata realizes, oh yep, right. So we get to see them work together to fend them off. But then Rata at one point throws one of the creatures, one that has electricity in that, into the electric fencing and shorts the power, and now the creatures get loose. Uh-oh, big chase scene. It's tragic for everyone else. Tragic really for everyone, but it is a very neat scene seeing them work together after they have been fighting. And also seeing Rata fight, because there's several scenes in this film of Rata fighting, and he can lay it down. And there's another scene I'm going to get to later that's very important for Rata's characterization and character development and motivations that we'll get to later on. But they get out and all that. Rata hijacks the speeder because, again, he does not want to go back to the twins. He knows what's going to come to, what they're going to do to him. But eventually the Mandalorian does catch up to him, also thanks to Zeb piloting the new Razor Crest and all that, and Rata agrees. And Rata reveals on the ship, when he and Din talk about why Din is doing this, that, hey, that commander coin you're looking for, it's a person who owned my contract. I went to his estate once because I was invited after a successful match or something like that. I forget the exact details in the film, but I saw a bunch of stormtroopers. That's who he is. The twins are playing both sides. So Din and Zeb makes a decision in the moment to, okay, let's go extract him right now. We got the intel from Rata. So they go, and we actually, let me get to right here. Rata's right there off screen. I loved how they framed this so that way we would be unaware of Rata being here in this scene when we saw this in the trailers. And so Zeb and Din are the ones who go in to extract the commander coin. And they blast up some guards, yada yada, they escape. And of course neither Rata nor Grogu know how to fly the ship, and things are coming hot, so they have to leave immediately. And of course, if it does work out, they do escape, they do some neat maneuvers, neat flying and all that. And they go back to Delphi base, turn in Commander Coin. Little disappointed, but no, the New Republic officer is a little disappointed because intelligence was working to cultivate a positive relationship with the Hutts, for information gathering and all that they're now put in jeopardy, etc., etc. But overall, at least he got Commander Coin, so that the relationship may not be great, but who knows how long that good relationship was going to last. Anyhow, from my personal perspective, and we learn a bit more later on, because at the end of the film, it's revealed that Commander Coin, he spilled the beans, revealing the twins were literally feeding information to the Empire, basically playing both sides. So it all worked out in the end. But after that mission, Din decides him and Grogu deserve a rest, so they go back to Navarre. We see the homestead and all that. We meet the Intelligence who are going to help upgrade the new Razor Crest to Din's standards, and then a bounty hunter. I believe it is supposed to be Embo, but he's not named in the film, and I was paying attention to the credits, and if it was, I missed his name. But Din is captured, but don't worry, the Inzelans and Grogu escape. Well, one Inzelan does escape, taken by Embo's dog-like creature, wolf-like creature, so that's why I'm saying it is Embo. One Inzelan is taken, and that's a scene I was mentioning in my spoiler review. It felt like we're setting up Grogu using Force Calm on a creature later on in the film, and we do see that with that creature. But there was another creature introduced that I thought was going to be done instead, but ended up not being done. But again, using Force Calm on the Embo's dog wolf later on made way more sense for the setup here. I should also mention that Din also arranges passage on a gun runner for water to get away from the twins. Of course, Embo sees that ship as it's leaving. I'm like, oh no, that ship is going to be intercepted. And yeah, it is intercepted, and Rata is captured. And so is Din, so they end up both before the twins. And thankfully, though, Grogu and the Inzelans are to the rescue aboard the Inzelans' tiny little ship that Din can't fit in. And the moment where there's actually a moment where Din comes up to it after they rescue him, and it's hilarious. Like, I can't fit in that. They could strap him on, but once they get into space, it's not going to work. And all that. But I'm going to get to that scene momentarily. But it's neat seeing their tiny little ship flying about. But basically, the twins take off Din's helmet, saying, now we've shamed you, yada yada, and Din's like, well, if I kill you, it doesn't matter, though. Technically, Rata is there, but he's being tortured, so he probably doesn't really remember it. And let's be real, Din knows how to do it, treat this stuff. All he has to do is go back to the waters of Mandalorian and take another bath. Basically get rebaptized. Doesn't need to happen in the film because he kills the people who saw his face, but yeah. That happens later on in the film, of course, and I'm going to get to that, but the twins drop Din down into the pit below their throne room, and he fends out some creatures, and then the big dragon snake, and that's a creature I thought Grogu was going to use Force Calm on and connect with via the Force. Didn't happen. Instead, he grabbed a detonator, put it on a little vent, and blew a big hole in the side, which allowed Din to escape, and then by extension. But Din does get bit by this creature, and we find out that it's a poisonous bite, so it's not looking good for him. And Din knows that. Grogu doesn't know that at this point. So after they get to the ship, Din carries them all four Inzelans and Grogu to the Inzelans ship, and Din says he's going to hold them off. You guys escape. The Inzelans said they're going to come back. And guess what they do? Bringing a New Republic strike force. Going to get to that in just a moment. But Din does that believing he is going to die. This way Grogu is going to survive, because he's going to live. Grogu, of course, doesn't go with Inzelans. I knew that was going to happen. I had that gut instinct. Which is a good thing for Din, because he would have not survived. Because, one, Grogu uses Force Heal to heal the wound itself, but not the poison. One, he doesn't know about the poison. And two, that might be a bit much for even the Force, the light side of the Force, to handle, unless Grogu were to give all his life essence over to Din, which he just may not know about because he hasn't studied enough of the Force yet, or hasn't connected deep enough with the Force to understand that is a possibility, like we saw in The Rise of Skywalker. Which, by the way, we saw Force Heal first in The Mandalorian Season 1 before we saw it in The Rise of Skywalker. Just remember that. But with that noted, Grogu starts killing for Din while he's incapacitated from the poison. He brings some water. He builds a mud shelter. I can say, he's building a mud shelter, just like Yoda. Yoda had a mud shelter on Dagobah, and now Hutter is a swamp planet like Dagobah. Makes sense. Though, he didn't make it big enough, so Din's feet are poking out, so he just covers some ferns and other shrubbery in order to hide Din from the droid Gotcha that the Hutts have hired as their security. So didn't they take out a good number of those droids initially before he succumbed to his wound in the poison? But while Grogu is caring for Din, bringing him water and all that while he's unconscious, he comes across basically a swamp dwelling and basically an old alien man just sitting on his rocking chair, napping, fishing, that kind of stuff. Steals a fish from him, goes back to that hut to steal another fish once Grogu finishes that first fish, and well, that old man notices him, but he's a kind old man. He talks about, he talks to Grogu, gives him some sage advice. Embo does show up too, so Grogu hides, and the old man basically prevents Embo's wolf dog from finding Grogu and say, "Hey, get away from my fish!" Like a dangerous old man, and it works. And from Embo, the old man learns that Din has been poisoned. He figures out that's who Grogu is caring for, and tells him it may already be too late, but here I got something right here. Fixes up a herbal remedy for the poison and tells Grogu to give it to Din, but lets him know that it may already be too late. All you can do is make him comfortable in his final moments, which is sad to think about. It could have happened, didn't happen. Of course, the Force seal healed the wound itself and likely gave Din enough time so that way by the time Grogu had the remedy it wasn't too late. Because if it wasn't for that Force seal, I think it would have been too late for Din. But also too, that was something that Grogu needed to heal. He needed to know that there's a chance that he would have to let Din go and move on. Still miss him, still mourn his passing, but understand that Din won't be in his life anymore. Ends up not happening, but a very important message, because remember, way in the Book of Boba Fett of all places, Grogu is given basically a choice: be with your father or be with the Jedi. You can't, walk two lives, for like a better term, and this is your choice to make. This is not going to be forced on you like so many other Jedi in the past, including Luke's own father. Remember that? Kind of. I bet Anakin could have said no if he really wanted to. He had enough agency, but still, Grogu was given a choice that so many Jedi didn't have until they were fully trained and thus knew nothing else but the Jedi. So, in this context, Grogu is now understanding, you chose to be with your father, but he may not be around forever, a lesson that he needed to learn. And while it does turn out in the end, that message does, I think, come back to play in a different way later on with Rata, and I'll get to that. But anyhow, Din and Grogu find the gunrunner ship, and they have a plan. They can run, or they can confront the Hutts. So they go to confront the Hutts. Din loads up with all the guns from the gunrunner ship. Well, not all of them, but he finds another one of, like, the rifle he had in season 1, and Boba Fett actually had in the holiday special cartoon. But they just load up and they go infiltrating the base. And the palace. And I love how they do it. Not going in, just going crash right into it. And that is what Din and Grogu do. They take on droids, and eventually they get to the throne room. And they had to also crash because the big front door was bolted shut with a big heavy plate of metal. Door steel, most likely. And so once they defeat some droids and all that, it's a cool action sequence. But I'm not going to focus on the action scene. I'm going to focus on the fight in the chambers, in the throne room. It's mostly actually Din versus Embo, but that's a background, because really the heart of it is Grogu rescuing Rata and then Rata fighting the twins. And something else I should note is from the moment Rata met Grogu, he basically, I'm going to say, fell in love. A good platonic friendship kind of love. Very much like, no, you're lucky to have a caring father kind deal. Very much. Maybe I'm not going to use the word jealous of Grogu, but telling Grogu to appreciate what you have in Din, because Din is a way better father than I had. And a big crux of Rata's narrative, his character, his motivation, is wanting to get out of Jabba's shadow. He doesn't want that life for him. I've already alluded to that. I've already said that, but that's the crux of it. And there's this line where the twins basically tell him that his father's not there to protect him anymore. And how does Rata respond? I forget the exact words he used to respond, but basically he punched back. He's fighting back. It's implied that they abused him whenever they could get away with it, whenever Jabba wasn't watching. And so I very much read that scene as Rata fighting back against his abusers. Whether it was physically abusive or just mentally abusive doesn't matter. He's fighting back against his abusers and standing up for himself. Well, not quite. He is a Hutt, a slug. Basically, they don't really stand like humans, but that's beside the point. He is standing up for himself. Yes, he's going to have to use his fists in that, but he is more than capable of doing that. And articulating his own opinions as well. But those are the true fights in the throne room. And throughout the fight, you can see Rata, no, he's holding his own, but it's all going against two Hutts, even though he's no trained fighter in that. But you can see every time one of the Hutts lands on the ground, it gets weaker and weaker and weaker. And eventually, the floor entirely collapses, and Rata, the twins, and Ember all fall into the pit. But Grogu saves Rata, using the Force to lift him out to safety. Meanwhile, down in the pits below, the twins call out Bounty Hunter Ember, but not by name, to save them from the dragon snake. What does Ember do? He leaves. They can't pay him anymore. He's a freelancer, he's being paid. He has no loyalty to the Hutts or anything like that. And he sees they're no longer worth working for, so he leaves. And they get eaten by the dragon snake. A comeuppance for them. For everything that they caused, they get what is coming from them, some karma. And then of course, the New Republic has shown up at this point, and the droids are coming again too, and Din basically tells them, you know what you're going to do? Shoot everything at my location. Go for it. And that's what they do eventually. Of course, they have to get out of the palace, and they just follow a passageway, and then they bust through a wall and just jump into the moat, which it's not that deep. I just love that idea. He knows how deep the remote is, but they do survive, and they're picked up by Zeb in a U-wing that we saw earlier in the film, which, by the way, from this scene actually too, when he was getting that first Imperial Commando, he was picked up on the fly in a hot situation by Zeb in the U-wing. But yeah, it's a good ending because throughout it, you get Grogu learning basically to act for himself throughout the film, but he's also hearing from Rata about how good of a father he has, and how Rata basically wishes. Rata and Grogu are shown to become friends, have a good relationship. On Delphi, they're seen playing along on the coast together, just having fun splashing in the water, which is good for Grogu to have just some fun like that, but also potentially the first time in years, decades, that Rata just had to, safe fun. Nothing threatening, not having to worry about being backstabbed, just some safe fun. It's probably very good for Rata's mental health. But at the end of the film, we learn that Commander Coin basically ratted the twins out, and also we learn too that Rata's thinking, you know what, instead of running, what if I join the New Republic? And I just love the idea, and that says, I probably got a uniform that fits you somewhere. But yeah, it would be unusual, but Rata's already shown in this film to be a different kind of Hutt. He doesn't want what Hutts are known for himself. He wants to be his own person, not in the shadow of his father, away from the abuse of his aunt and uncle. Which I think there's going to be a lot of people who relate to Rata on that level. Probably everything with Rata is probably the most profound stuff in this film, because everything with Din and Grogu is basically kind of have been addressed in Star Wars in some form or another. But Rata, growing up in the shadow of a father who is a well-known criminal, and you just don't want that, while also having your family being abusive, at least mentally, if not physically abusive to you, is something, and being able to live your own life outside that shadow and also stand up to your abusers. I guarantee you there's going to be a lot of people who relate to Rata the Hutt on a deep emotional level, and that is profound, the most profound thing in this film. But Grogu also learns lessons for this. He learns to care for Din. Din actually has a line after knowing that Grogu cared for him and nursed him back to health, that the old care for the young, then the young care for the old. Basically, there is a sentiment among some people that they only have kids to care for them in their old age, which is a poor sentiment. But the idea is, if you truly raise kids to care for you, the idea is that if you truly raise kids, caring for them, loving them, just being good parents, setting them up for a good life, they will respond in kind when you need help. Don't go in expecting that, but if you just care for them because it's the right thing to do, they're going to care for you when you need it. And this is contrast with Rata, who never got that care as a kid, clearly did not have the happiest life. When he was in his contract, fighting in the arena was almost one of the happiest times in his life, because he was making a name for himself, separate from the legacy, the impact, the shadow of his father, Jabba the Hutt. I had said in my spoiler-free review that I did not expect Rata's role to be so big. I expected it to be a one-and-done cameo type thing, but no, he's essentially the third main character in this movie. Din and Grogu, of course, 1 and 2, interchangeable, they're tied. And Zeb is pretty up there, but in terms of characterization, character development, there's not much, of course. It doesn't need to be much, especially for a good film, but Grogu learns to be self-sufficient, and we learn Rata's motivation. And it was great seeing him stand up for himself in the film, and gave some really good development to the Hutts as a whole, showing that not all Hutts are the same. Now, actually, in the Star Wars The Old Republic MMO, there actually is a Hutt who wants to work with the Jedi, wants to work with the Republic, wants to, he still has some shady stuff, but wants to do most things legit and above board. But it's not something we've re-gotten in any major media, so that makes it special, it makes this unique. Granted, of course, most of this film is, of course, about the Mandalorian and Grogu and the adventure that they go on because of Rata the Hutt and hunting down Imperials. But ultimately, it is a good, fun film. I very much liked how it went. I liked how it ended. I liked the message, the themes, the thematic elements of it. I wouldn't call it, a masterpiece. I wouldn't call it the best film ever, but I gotta say it. I like The Rise of Skywalker. This is a way better film than The Rise of Skywalker. From a technical perspective, from a writing perspective, The Rise of Skywalker was fun, but I wouldn't call it impressive or anything, just fun. But this film is enjoyable, it's fun, I think it's well written, it has a heartwarming message. It is a way better film. I like The Last Jedi as well. I think this film is better than The Last Jedi as well. Partially because I liked the conclusion better. Basically, The Last Jedi was a middle of a 3-part installment. This film had to actually have an ending, and because of that, we got a good conclusion rather than setting, basically setting things up for the heroes to win after the lowest moment, which is what The Last Jedi and by extension The Empire Strikes Back do, which make a very different film, which are not necessarily as fun or as enjoyable, but does make films that are way more interesting. And I do think those films are more interesting than this film from a story perspective. But from an enjoyability, from a messaging, I think I might like this film better. Of course, I need to rewatch those films. I need to think on this film, rewatch it again, go see it again, to really understand, to really contemplate my opinions on this and how I feel about it. But right now, I do think I like it more than the sequel trilogy. And I think that's mainly down to the fact that I loved what they did with Rata. He didn't have any major character arc, just coming to realize, maybe there's another way I can get out my father's shadow. But ultimately, he didn't need development. He already had his development. He just had to articulate his development and stand up for himself. And that is what we see him do in the film. We see Grogu learn to act on his own rather than just following Din around. Yes, he does it to save Din, but he's making decisions. He's driving the plot forward, and not because he's being a chaos gremlin as he was at times in the show, or as a MacGuffin as he was in the first chapter, very much so, but because he is making choices to help another character. Yes, it's his father, but still, he's making that choice. He's dictating the direction the plot goes with a conscious choice. Rather than, ooh, that's neat. No, he's being driven by what he cares for about doing the right thing. Saving his father is the right thing to do. Especially, he may not understand everything that his father is doing, but he doesn't want his father to die, and he's going to do what he can, what is in his power and his abilities. And he doesn't fall to the dark side to do it. It also helps getting help from an old man who probably does not give a care anymore, but still likes helping others. Honestly, that old alien man, I don't know what his name was, I don't know what his species, but I gotta say, probably my favorite glupshitter from this film. I kinda hope we we don't need much about him, but I want a name, please, and I just want to know, from a certain point of view style short story for him, because honestly, my favorite side character is that old man. His dialogue, his voice sounded a bit Cajun as well, which fit, I think, nicely with the swamp-like atmosphere of now Hutter, Louisiana, Cajun Bayou. I really much like that. You gotta give him a French-sounding name, please. Go into Cajun theme. I think that'd be really, really interesting. Of course, don't know too much about it, but that's the glupshitter of this movie, in my opinion, and I loved it so much. But another thing I do want to address is we do get little glimpses of the Empire. I think the trailers made the Empire seem like it was going to be a bigger thing than the Hutts in the film, but I'm glad that the Hutts were the main antagonists and not the Empire, because it's showing that the Empire is, it's still there, it's still a threat. The Republic, New Republic, is working to deal with it, avoid another war, which one of the characters does state outright, but the Hutts are an active criminal empire, and likely has the more pressing impact on the galaxy and a personal impact on our characters. And so, yeah, that's overall, I loved this film. I loved what I had to say. I loved the journey the characters go on. This film definitely is more about the journey than messaging or anything like that. But hey, sometimes we need that kind of stuff. And the last thing I will add, because I didn't talk a lot about the New Republic coming in hot on now Hutter, but that's partially because, one, Commander Coin blabbed, though he did ask for his attorney, which I very much love that he asked for attorney to be questioned when he was he did ask for attorney to be present when he was being questioned. I love that. Just also too, because that does show the New Republic is apparently known for giving Imperials attorneys, and I like that. But he blabbed that the twins, were playing both sides, giving information to the Empire. So of course, the Republic now has justification to go in hot to rescue Din, and they do. And the Y-Wings unleash the heavy ordnance on the palace, blowing it up. Really, that's going to cut the head off the Hutt cartel. That's not going to end. It might actually be worse in the long run because of the power vacuum. But I mean, there was already a power vacuum when Jabba died, so could it be any worse? But also too, I love seeing how the New Republic using, and by thus the rebels, because that's what they used to be, But New Republic now using the assets they have very effectively. They have X-Wings and Y-Wings. I don't think they brought the B-Wing or any A-Wings, but they brought the Y-Wing. They had to extract Din, Grogu, and Rata somehow. But the New Republic pilots helping each other take down the droid Gocha fighters. I was going to say the Hutt fighters, but the droid Gocha is being contracted by the Hutts. But taking out the turbo lasers, taking out the launch tubes, coordinating their actions and taking out tactical objectives to achieve a strategic result. They take out the launch tubes to prevent reinforcements. They take out turbo lasers in order to clear the air. Both of those are suppressing ground assets that can impact their ability to conduct their mission. Then once those two tactical objectives are clear, they then target the palace to actually destroy it. That would have been more of a strategic target, mind you, but still, I very much like that. I know if you get into military circles and proper military circles analyzing actions and all that, you hear suppression of air superiority, suppression of surface to air missiles, things like that, and we see the New Republic strategy is to eliminate the threats on the ground and in the air. They eliminate the fighters in the air, and then they also direct targeting at the launch tube so further fighters can be launched, and also targeting at the turbo laser cannons to prevent surface to air anti-fighter fire. I was going to say AA, but or surface to air missile, but that's not really shown as much. But it's basically the equivalent of AA guns from World War II. Star Wars is partially inspired by World War II combat after all. But I very much love seeing that being done tactically. They have actual objectives to handle, and they're going to eliminate the things that are going to prevent them from achieving their mission, and they do that. And I don't think they lost a single fighter, which is impressive, mind you. But that's kind of side point. The thing I already stated, and I'm going to emphasize again, is I love seeing that the New Republic fighters actually use tactics in order to achieve victory against the Hutts, and the droid Gocha by extension. And that's pretty much it. I already mentioned that Rata decides at the end of the film he's going to join the New Republic. I really can't wait to see how that turns out. Honestly, too, I now want Rata and Leia to have a conversation. It'd be very interesting. I feel like Leia would probably try to be diplomatic about the fact that she killed Rata's father, and then Rata's like, no, you did me a great service. Made it easier for me to get out from under his shadow. Don't know if he would actually say that, but it would be, now that that's a possibility of a conversation, I want that as a conversation. I want to hear how those two characters would interact. Would Leia feel guilty about killing Rata's father, not for killing Jabba the Hutt, but for removing Rata's father from his life? Would Rata be appreciative of Leia or not, or does he wish that he had the ability to stand up to his father directly? He got to stand up to the twins though, so that probably gave him the emotional closure he needed. But still, I want to know. I want to see that interaction. It's not needed for the story, but it's just like, I want to know more about that old alien man that helped Grogu. You don't need it. I want it because I think it would be interesting. Now, I've gone on for over 40 minutes now talking about this film. There's more I can talk about. And I think I will talk about. I'll probably do some individual episodes here, and I'll probably do some individual videos talking about elements here and there. But for now, I'm just going to summarize everything I've said in a conclusion. Why am I narrating what I'm doing? Because I want to. In short, or in conclusion, I love this film. I want to see it again. I very much enjoyed it, and it was way better than I was expecting. I was expecting my expectations were met, my hopes were met. Fun rap, heartwarming message, we got that, and way better than I was expecting. I was expecting basically more like, a television movie quality, and we got proper film quality out of this, which I very much appreciated. And I want to hear your thoughts. What did you think of The Mandalorian and Grogu? Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. And of course, stay tuned for other videos about this film, and may the Force be with you always. Thank you for watching my video. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please be sure to give this video a like and share. Also, consider subscribing to my channel to stay up to date on all my latest content. In the meantime, thank you for watching, and as always, have a good day, a good night, wherever you are. May the Force be with you always.